Well, hello, finally, everybody. Welcome to another episode of We Watch Shudder. My name is JD. Who's here with me?
It's Michelle. We're just
It's
gonna ask
Michelle.
questions.
We finally made it for an episode. It's been,
Yeah.
as I said on the Facebooks and the other social medias, it was a heckin' salty boy of a day yesterday, and so we decided, heck it. These people are just going to have to wait. They're not paying for this podcast. So,
If you
here
can't
we are.
handle me at my salty, then you don't deserve me at my just a little
Sour?
bit less salty. Yeah. First I'm sour, then I'm sweet. Yeah, we figured, we're just not going to be in a great place to record this. We should probably just hold off and give these people the quality content that they have come to expect from us.
Oh, they're getting it. They're getting it already. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Oh, man. We're here, guys. First of all, if this is your first time tuning in, thank you. If this is your not first time tuning in, thank you, too. We're here to talk about the very, very latest, just dropped yesterday, Shudder original. And this time around, it's not it's a documentary. It's not a feature film. It's a documentary about someone who's very near and dear to me. It's called Dario Argento, Panico. And if you can't tell from the title, it's a documentary about Dario Argento.
Whoa, I
And-
never would have known.
I know, right? It's almost like they planned it that way. But
Spoiler alert.
yeah, guys, look, you either know Argento or you don't, and if you don't, stop listening to this podcast immediately. It's not nearly that important. I'm going to need you to go to every movie service you have and just watch everything you can find that Dario Argento has made. We're going to talk about some of it here today as we talk about the documentary, and then also, after we're done talking about the documentary, we're going to go back and talk about his very first feature film, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which, ironically enough, is the one early Argento film I have never seen until today. And I was super excited about it. Michelle's just like, yep, I knew this was what it was going to be like. He's just going to...
Yep.
Guys, Argento is one of those guys...
I knew this was going to be your episode. Yeah.
Who, he doesn't work for everybody. In fact, Michelle and I have had this discussion several times. There are things that he does that just don't quite connect with her taste the way they do with mine. But anyway, let's just talk about the movie, and then I'll think of things to say as we're going along. I don't think this is one that we need to, obviously, spoiler-free thoughts. It's a documentary about the man's life and his work. But Michelle, do we have a summary, at least, a description of this film? Do we even need one?
Here's my summary. This is a documentary about filmmaker Dario Argento.
I like it.
Yeah,
Succinct, to the point.
To write summaries. Yep.
Well, yeah,
don't
they
need to
should,
know anything
because
else.
I don't know if you've seen the description on the Shudder website, but it's a gosh darn novel again.
Mm-hmm.
A whole lot of things to say. I mean, if you're interested in some details, it is well written, but man, if you just want to know the gist of it, it's about Dario. It's right there.
All
in the
those people
title.
who are mad that this documentary is mostly in Italian and then they have to read are going to be
I
so mad when they see
know.
that summary because they're like, oh, I don't want to read that much.
Oh, let's dive into that element of this right away. There's actually a review, one of the first reviews that I saw on the Shudder website from a user. I'm going to call you out by name. Prospero. One skull for Prospero's review. And here's what it says. What's with the no dubbing anymore? I don't watch something to read. Now, that's a thing that I have said in jest on a number of occasions. Fact of the matter is, I have a little trouble focusing on subtitles, so it's a bit of a challenge for me. But are you kidding? Like, this guy clearly was very serious when he said, I don't know who it is. I should not assume genders here. This person, I don't watch something to read. You know what you're doing every time you read something, buddy? Watching. I don't know if anyway. I probably got way too carried away about what a dumb review about
It's
a
just a review
documentary.
being mad that other languages exist, and that's
Oh
silly.
God. Ugh, I had
I
to
think like
read.
I do agree that like movies should give the option for dubbing because I agree with accessibility.
Sure.
And there are some people who rely on that. However, this is a documentary, so dubbing it doesn't feel authentic. These are the
Yeah.
real people and
Right.
they really speak that
Exactly.
language. So that's
Exactly.
why I'm like that's ridiculous on a documentary.
Yeah. Also, it's here's what's really interesting to me about it is I feel like what's bizarre to me is I never would like if you had shown me the Venn diagram of people who say I don't watch something to read and the Venn diagram of people who are interested in documentary films, I would assume those were just two completely separate, non-overlapping circles. But apparently I was wrong.
Well, there's a very small overlap and it's the people
It's
who
Prospero.
yeah, they like watching documentaries about how much reading sucks.
Oh, that could
Th-
be so.
yeah,
So
that's small overlap.
that's all we had to say about Dario Argento Panico. We just wanted to shit on this Prospero person for their stupid. Look, I go out of my way to be really kind about movies and things, but I will. This is a stupid review of this movie. Anyway,
Was there
Michelle.
anything in the documentary you found particularly interesting? Do we want to do
Yeah.
ratings now or later?
Yeah.
Also?
Well, let's talk about it a little bit, and
Okay.
then drop some ratings. Because again, this is
Yeah.
look, guys. There's not a lot to say about this. They go through, tell you a little bit about his early life. They tell you about his career. They kind of heavily focus on the dominant period that is considered his greatest work. You know, from all the way back to 1970 with Bird with the Crystal Plumage. Kind of all the way up through Opera in 1987. And they also talk about how there was a very clear sort of separation in his work after Opera and the rest of his career. But I'm not. So it's just it goes through those different phases. Talks about each movie a little bit. Talks about his relationships with his ex-wives and his children and that sort of thing. There's not really a whole lot to say except it's just full of information. Here's what I found really interesting. Most of the stuff about the movies and the reception of those movies was stuff that I was already at least passingly familiar with. What I love so much about this is I have never gotten to just sit down and watch an interview or chats with Dario Argento. I'm sure I could have done it at some point, and I guess I've seen little clips here and there, but this is it's very biographical, right? It's as much about Dario Argento the filmmaker as it is about Dario Argento's films. And you learn a lot about just who he is as a person in this and how that informs what he's done in his films. And I found a lot of that stuff very, very interesting. A big thing that I didn't know, I don't think you can consider this a spoiler because apparently it's a thing that's been talked about and I just somehow never noticed it, is how the two main characters in Four Flies on Grey Velvet are very, very visually similar to Dario Argento and his wife at the time, whose name unfortunately I can't recall right now. And he swears that it's just, it just kind of, it happened that way. It wasn't intentional in any way, but like, I mean, I don't want to spoil too much about what happens in that movie with those two characters, but it's Dario Argento. I'm sure you could piece it together a little bit. And then they talk later on about there's some definite weirdness when he starts working with his daughter Asia because man, there are some things with nudity in those movies where I think a lot of that element is just sort of a cultural thing where there isn't such a shyness against a lot of that. But some very sexual stuff in like Phantom of the Opera that they talk about. And some very intriguing elements of how he works and who he is as a person, and those interactions. I found it very informative and a really interesting look at Dario the person, like I've never been able to have before, and that for me, as a serious Argento fan, was really cool.
Um, this documentary had a huge struggle, or like a what's the word? Like a big challenge to get over with me. And that is that I was trying to think of a case where I've ever watched a documentary that is about a human being and is not scandalous that I enjoyed, where it's just a documentary about people being like, this guy was great. The only thing I could think of was Bob Ross. There's a really good documentary about him and it's really heartwarming, but even that has a lot
Do
of
you
like
think
how he got screwed over by business partners and stuff.
my
And so
immediate
just
I'm sorry, I don't
mhm.
mean to interrupt, Michelle, but my
No, it's okay.
immediate conversational thought is, would you not consider This Is Guar in that category, or do you find that, I guess that story maybe is a little scandalous. There's,
I also
there's,
think that's an important distinction though. Glad you asked that because I like documentaries where they are creating a movie. Even like William Friedkin's The Exorcist, that documentary, it is just him
oh yeah,
and it's
Leap of
kind
Faith,
of
that was
about
great.
him.
Yeah,
But it's very in-depth discussion about the movie itself. I
sure,
don't really care about the lives of people. I want to know about the things they created and
that's
kind
fair.
of yeah, as I was watching this, I was like, why is this not working for me? Because I love documentaries. And then I started thinking, are there documentaries about a person that are not scandalous that I enjoy? And the only one I could think of was Bob Ross. So I think I just don't really care about like who these people are unless it happened on set. And they're like, that day of filming was crazy because this happened, even if it was a good thing. Like, I want to know direct impacts to the work that they produced and, see those things and know how it affected that. And I mean, technically, all of this guy's life affected his art. That's how it works. But
For
I
sure.
just don't really care about like who he was married to. Like,
Ah, no,
yeah,
and
I just,
I get
yeah,
that. Like, I'm not typically, and those elements of it, like just the fact of, hey, this was his wife and they had kids and that sort. Uh, the thing about it that I enjoyed was how specifically those things inform his work. Right? Like,
yeah,
I feel like this is a movie that only spends as much time as it does with his first wife, because they have that point to make about how that relationship moved itself into his work and was represented in a fantastical way a lot of times. But I totally get that. A movie that's just about like celebrity gossip type stuff, I couldn't care less.
this,
Also, what this one, I think a big part of why this also works for me is just because of how big of an Argento fan I am. I feel like
mhm.
if you're not a big Argento fan, like, you might be able to appreciate what the documentary is and has done, but I think it's going to resonate more with those of us who are already passionate about his work.
Yeah, that was going to be the other thing that I was going to mention. I do want to get into the daughter stuff a little bit
Have at it.
in a second because that was the part that was the most interesting for me. But this movie assumes that you were a big Dario Argento fan. It just assumes that you know a lot of things about him and that you know his previous work. So when they refer to the movies, they don't say much about like, oh, this was this movie and this is what happens in that movie. They just kind of say like, so during the filming of this movie and assume that you know it, and I am not. I would say I like some of his films, but I'm not an Argento fan overall. When we reviewed Dark Glasses for the show, I was so disappointed in that movie, and I had to ask you if it was supposed to be a comedy because I found it so bad.
I remember that.
So yeah, so
Uh,
like I'm not an Argento fan. I love Suspiria and I like opera and a few others probably that I'm not thinking of right now, but overall I'm not like, oh man, can't wait to go see what Argento puts out. So there's
yeah,
a lot of stuff there where it was a hurdle that it never got over, but it's also not this. like documentary's fault. I'm like, I don't think this is poorly made. It's just I'm
No.
not the target audience. It's a
Right.
niche
I think
group
the
of people.
documentary, I think you're absolutely right. It 100% assumes that you are familiar with his work in the way it presents itself. And that is obviously going to very necessarily limit its appeal. But again, I think that is in a lot of ways kind of what they were going for here is
Yep.
this movie is for those people who
Exactly.
are familiar with all of this. And I really appreciate, like I said, they don't spend a lot of time on it or belabor it, but they make the very obvious point that a lot of people have made is sometime between Opera in 1987 and Trauma in 1993, things changed with Dario. And I've seen Trauma and the Stendhal Syndrome from 93 and 96. I don't enjoy them as much as I prefer his heavy phase. And he hasn't really done anything since then that has struck me the way that first 15 years or so did. And there's even some shaky points in there, but and I don't know. I think obviously they point to things that happened in his personal life that maybe took away some of his inspiration. The loss of his father was a big thing for him. And then also just the nature of the cinema industry in Italy changing to be so TV driven. But the thing I found most interesting in that discussion, and what I thought was very honest and very real, is they're talking to Michel Soave, who of course was almost like an apprentice under Argento and went on to make his own films. He just comes out and says, look, sometimes no matter how good you are, people just lose interest, right? The demand just goes away. And I think a certain amount of that happened too. He wasn't being afforded the opportunities it took to be able to do what he was doing in his grand period. I mean, that whole run from Deep Red all the way through Opera, yes, even Phenomena, which is questionable at times. And then I guess I also have never seen the 5 Days, his attempt at branching out into something different. Because I've always been told to not bother seeing it. Sooner or later, I will see it as a completist, but I feel like I want to make it the very last one I see, because there's still a bunch of them in the later period that I've just been like, oh, I don't know if I wanna do this to my memory of Dario, but yeah, I thought it was.
I'm going to check out Dracula 3D just because you said I shouldn't, and it has a 3.6 on IMDb. That appeals to me. That might make me an Argento fan.
It's rough. It's rough for sure.
I'm excited. I'm going to check that one out.
I did kind of enjoy Dark Glasses. Here's an interesting thing about this documentary. Shut up. About this documentary is in some of the descriptions, especially on Shudder. And I don't remember if it's also pointed out in the one on IMDb, but they talk about how this documentary is being made while he's gone off again to some hotel in the middle of nowhere by himself to work on his next film. But then they nowhere in the movie whatsoever do they ever talk about how he's there working on his next film.
Yes.
Like they
I
never mention that.
Agree.
And there are clips from Dark Glasses, his most recent film from 2022, in this documentary. So I don't know if the idea is just that, like, that's just the reality of how this was made, and so they're using that to promote it, but it has nothing to do with the story of the movie. But I thought that was weird. I completely
agree.
I
Yeah,
was
because
very interested to see what they were like, how this was all going to tie into the creation of that next film or whatever.
yep, because like I said, I don't really care about his life. When they start talking about like he's a great man, and it's just interviews with like Jasper Noe and like Jasper, I love you, but like why are you here? And, like
It's
Guillermo,
Gaspar,
like
by the way.
oh okay, whatever. I like his work. I don't know how to say
Well,
his
you're wrong.
name. I am. But like they have all these people just gathered to talk about how great he is. And I was like, oh no, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. And then they're like, he locks himself in a hotel to make his movies. I'm like, sweet. So this is gonna be the movie making process, and that's the thing that I like. And then we never see him like on set
Yeah,
for this particular
it's not
movie.
part of this documentary at all. Like this is
It's
literally
very strange.
yeah, this is word for word from the Shudder description of the film. It says, now he finds himself in a hotel room to return to the like I even got to go back further than this. In the secluded ambience of hotel rooms, Dario Argento crafted his greatest cinematic creations, seeking solace from the outside world to delve into his nightmares. Now he finds himself in a hotel room to return to the very setting that ignited his creative fervor to conclude his latest script and participate in an intimate interview, all while being followed by a film crew documenting his life for a movie about his illustrious career. None of this is about, like, they casually mention that he would go off to hotels to be by himself to write scripts. It's not a focus of this story at all. His work on a new film, like he's come back to this place where he always goes to finish this new project. There's literally nothing about that in this film.
There's also very little intimate interview with him.
Yeah,
It's a lot of archival footage and just other people's opinions
yeah,
on his art.
I feel genuinely like the description on this on the Shudder website is very misleading.
But it's
Uh,
also not, because the movie itself like opens and then it's like them in the car going to the hotel and discussing it, and then it cuts to a black screen with that text telling us, so it gives you the impression that this is going to be the focal point of this, and then it never comes back to it.
yeah, well, I mean, they definitely mention it, but I don't know that I ever would have gotten the impression that it was going to be the focal point if I didn't already have that idea in my head, because thinking back on it, they just casually mention it and then completely move on, right?
No, I did
So,
not read the description. I just
okay,
watched the documentary, and it made a big impression on me because of the fact that they cut to black and then show the text as like a big reveal. Like that's a
sure.
documentary thing where like if this is supposed to be like a big moment, cut to black, tell them exactly what it is. And that's what they did. And then I was like, okay, cool. So for me, I was a little bit excited then, because I'm like, sweet, I want to see the movie making process. I want to see, like, is he secluded in a hotel room and goes kind of crazy from the isolation? Is that why this is going to be interesting? And then they immediately just start interviewing like his wife about like, was he charming? Yes.
I
He's
also
Italian, of course.
I also like that the bulk of the stuff that is in this documentary about the hotel setting is Dario just complaining the whole time about how what they've brought him to is absolutely not what he used to do. This
Yep.
is not his environment. He's constantly griping about it. He's like, "Where have you brought me? What am I doing here?" It's actually kind of amusing.
uh Near the beginning where they're talking about like how great women are in the films, and like how it's just great watching movies about women screaming because they're beautiful, and then Jasper Noe being like, oh sorry,
Gaspar.
Gaspar Noe being like, they're not sexual, but they're not sexual. Like it was just weird. Like
Well,
those kind of moments happen throughout where I was
no,
like, this is a weird
I'm
connection.
I'm glad you brought that up, Michelle, because my reaction to that quote was, yeah, of course Gaspar Noé is the guy who's going to put
Same.
everything into a sexual, non-sexual
Yeah.
context.
I'm a
I will
fan of
tell you
his stuff, and I'm like,
I
ooh.
will tell you this much. There is very little, at least for me, very little in Argento's prime period. Like there are moments where, from a plot perspective or even from a visual perspective, like there are the trappings of sexuality, but there is nothing sexual about Dario Argento stuff, at least for me. I know there are people who
Same.
disagree.
Yeah.
I have never seen it.
I don't think having beautiful women in your movies is automatically a sexual thing.
Well,
And
and there are
obviously it's like
also
tons of beautiful women and they're vulnerable. And so then when they start comparing it to like they're very sexual, but they're not sexual. Like that just I did not like the way that
yeah.
made me feel.
Well, and like people, of course, have made the very obvious sort of suggestion that he's got all these a lot of women getting stabbed, women getting stabbed, and it's like, look, is sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Is that the line? Like now, if you want to talk about what these movies maybe say about some of the thoughts Dario Argento, the human being, sometimes has about women that maybe he needs to talk to somebody professional about, I go with you on that trip all day long. This man clearly, but also by the same token, like as long as he's just working them out through the art and not actually doing it, which by all means seems like that's the case. But man, he sure does like to stab ladies. He really does. So there's some, and again, you add that on top of that whole thing from Four Flies on Grey Velvet, where not only is this is some dude stabbing a lady, but it's a dude who looks like him stabbing a lady who looks like his wife. It's like unbelievable. But I guess I didn't expect I would even have this much to say about it. As we went along, you of course probably were like, JD's gonna go off for half an hour about this movie.
I knew. You like Argento, but
I do.
Talking about beautiful women, I do want to get into The Bird with Crystal Plumage.
Oh,
before
let's
we
do
are
number
too far.
ratings
Yep.
on the
Ratings
documentary.
first.
In the context that again, I am a serious, like, major Dario Argento fan. For me, this is I can't go the full 5 skulls because there are things where they gave me just enough of a taste of something that, like, this is a case of, and again, because it's a documentary, and I've said this before, I would have liked this movie to have been another hour longer, right? I could have watched so much more of this. There are things that they could have delved into a whole lot more deeply, and I would have been enthralled. I can certainly understand how that would absolutely not work for a lot of people. So from that sense, it definitely was a little bit of a tease of a film. But this, I'm going 4.5 on this one. As an Argento fan, this is a real enjoyable sort of light dive into the man and his inspirations.
And as a not Argento fan, somebody who likes his work, and was interested to see where this documentary would go, and then did not find much appeal in it, I'm going 1.75. I know.
Michelle.
Because we rate based on our enjoyment, not on the quality of the film.
No, that's very fair.
Yeah,
Sorry,
because
guys.
we rate based on our enjoyment. So if somebody listens to this and they're like, it was a way better movie. Yeah, no, that's fine. I did not find it interesting. I found certain parts interesting. So just it's not poorly made. It's just not my thing.
Y'all leave Michelle alone. She can give an Argento thing a 1.75 if I say so.
I'm a delicate person.
Your friggin' opinions don't matter. So now, Michelle.
Yeah.
What are we talking about now?
The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. His first feature film, I believe you had said.
Yes, it's the first film he made. Excuse me, guys. I'm so sorry. I got all coughed up there for a minute.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. I'm gonna be just fine.
Okay.
He had written several things before this, but this was his first feature as a director. Yes. Okay. And so, I guess one thing, just to give it some context here, Michelle, like I said, I have seen up until this point, I had seen everything he did after this movie all the way through Stendhal Syndrome in 1996, but I have never seen this movie. And so I have the context of his entire body of work, or at least a big chunk of it. Which of his films had you seen before going into this? Do you know for sure which ones you've seen?
Suspiria, both of them, and Opera. Those ones I know because I enjoy them. Dark Glasses because we did it for the show. And then outside of those ones that made an impression on me, I would have to look at a list of his work and see what
Okay.
stands out.
No, cool.
So
That
not
makes
very
okay.
much.
Right.
I know I've seen other things because you, especially after Dark Glasses, you gave me some homework. And so I've seen other things, but I just don't remember what they were and I didn't really care for them. So I
No,
know
that's
there's
fair.
more, but those are the ones that I liked or else we did for the show.
Sure. So
Yeah.
Argento, of course, is known for having this very sort of what's the word I'm looking for? It starts with a D. I thought the word all the way home on my drive home from work, and now it's very
Is it Dario?
No, disorienting is not the word I'm thinking. Anyway, this very weird kind of atmosphere and vibe where not everything is necessarily legit or realistic, but somehow Guillermo del Toro talks about in the documentary. Somehow it just works. Bird with the Crystal Plumage is what we're talking, and this is a whole lot more realistic than a lot of his other films. This is his first giallo, but it also takes giallo a little bit. It very much evolved the genre. It's a little bit more violent. It's a little bit bloodier, which is kind of hilarious when you think about it. But do you have a summary of the plot for this one, Michelle? I almost forgot what we were doing. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I do have IMDb description line, and then we can do our ratings and then enter spoiler territory and give a plot if we want to do our traditional format for the second
Let's
movie.
do it.
Okay, so
Put the
IMDb
training wheels
description.
back on.
An American expatriate in Rome attempts to unmask a serial killer he witnessed in the act of an attempted murder and is now hunting him and his girlfriend. The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. 1970, rated GP. What does that mean?
I don't know.
GP. I have to go look.
GP.
Okay. I'm
Why
sure
don't you
it's probably
find
like
out?
parental guidance, but guide parental because it's Italian.
Oh, you may be onto something. Yes,
Yeah,
so
I'd have to go look.
that's the bird with the crystal plumage.
Yep.
Murder
The
mystery.
end.
Yeah. So what do
What would
you
you rate it?
bird with yeah, let's just do ratings. Is that where we
Yeah.
are? Oh, okay. Why am I so disoriented today? I don't
See, this is
understand.
why we didn't record yesterday, you guys, because it would have been even messier.
Oh
We were
Lord.
not in the
We're
headspace for it.
having
But
we're
then it's
having
been
a
8 days
time.
since we recorded, so then it's especially messy. This is our lives.
We love you. No, seriously, Bird with the Crystal Plumage. I fucking love this movie. This is really like it's not deep red, right? It's not that. But what I love about this is where how you can see in his style here, in his visual presentation, you can see elements of what he is going to become. The story and the plot and everything. It's not quite as nightmarish. It's not quite as surreal yet. He does a lot of interesting, fun things with editing and with camera angles that just sort of hint at that. But this is really great. I had 3 different theories along the way about who the Giallo killer was going to be, the black-gloved stabby menace. I was wrong on all 3 of them. I thought it was really effective. I really enjoyed this. I'm going 4.5 skulls, just like I did with the documentary. This is great. It's right away. I would say probably it's in my top 5. I think for sure. Argento films.
Oh, okay. I surprisingly also enjoyed this. I really did. I don't know, but I think like having a man in the lead role of an Argento film gave it a different feel because it's always women being menaced in his stuff. And then I had just watched the documentary showing me all these movies I haven't seen where it's women being attacked and murdered all the time. So
Oh yeah.
going from a documentary where they really sell home like women are the victims in all of these, and then I watch a movie that's about a guy who's now experiencing this. That was actually kind of like a breath of fresh air where I was like, "Oh, the thing you had said that we were going to watch like is
Well,
against that." And it's nice.
I mean, at the same time, though, all of the violence more or less being done in, like, the killer in the movie is still
Mhm.
killing women.
But
But
there's a dude who dies, like there's kind of an exception to it. So
oh, well, there
it's
are
not
exceptions
just
to that in
women.
his other
Yeah.
work too. But
Okay.
I
Well,
do know
my
what you're
favorite one
saying.
is Suspiria.
No, I know what you're saying here, which is that in his other films, the central figure tends to be a victimized or oppressed or otherwise put upon woman. In
Yep.
this, he is it's a guy, it's a man who gets caught up in everything, and is trying to figure out what's going on. So I definitely understand what you mean there.
Yep, exactly. Where it's just it was after having it hammered home so much
Yeah,
that he puts beautiful women in his movies and then murders him. Obviously, there's an attempted murder, but there's like a dude who dies. Like there's a lot. It doesn't seem. It seems like
it
this
is a
is
whole lot more
whoever
traditional.
you
Yes.
are, you're getting stabbed. And you know what? Thank God. But I really enjoyed it. I would not have thought this was an Argento film because I think his stuff is often like kind of not my thing, and this I liked it. It was solid. I am going with
Delirious. That's the word with the D that I was trying to think of earlier. Delirious. Yes, there's a delirium in his films. Oh my god, I feel so glad that I remembered. I'm so sorry.
I'm giving it a 4.
Okay. Delirious.
Delirium. Delirious.
Uh anyway.
Okay.
Yeah,
Spoiler
so a
territory.
4 for Michelle, 4.5 for me. That's a 4.25. I think that's pretty damn good for the bird with crystal plumage, especially considering how wrong Michelle was about Dark Glasses. Look, I'm not saying Dark Glasses is the greatest thing Dario Argento ever did. They're
Not even
definitely
the goodest
that
thing he's ever done.
that whole snakes and thing that was okay, that was a little much, but it's whatever. I had a good time with that. Especially the first half of that movie, I thought was really, really good. Anyway, we're here to talk about the bird with the crystal plumage. Spoilers, Michelle. You want to run the plot summary,
Sure. Okay.
guys? If this is the
So
first time you've ever heard Michelle run a plot summary, you're gonna love it.
I don't prepare for the record. So, the bird with the crystal plumage. There's a guy, and he's living in Rome, and he's walking home in Rome while reading a tome. Anyway, he's walking home, and he sees a lady being murdered, and he's like, "Holy shit! I should probably do something about that." So he tries running, and then he gets stuck in the entryway of the museum, and then the police finally show up, and then they're like, "Hey, the lady didn't die." And he's like, "That's great. I would like to go to America now, please." And they're like, "No, you're American. You guys know how to murder a lot, so you have to stay here and give us your advice as an American on what is going on. And we also have to prove it wasn't you because we know how you Americans be. Am I right?" And the guy's like, "God damn it, my girlfriend's not going to like this." And then he goes home, and the girlfriend, she does not like that. But then now he's suddenly like helping solve these serial killer murders, and the killer calls him at one point, and he's like, "Hey, if you keep investigating this, I'm gonna call your girlfriend." And then I'm gonna kill your girlfriend. And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm glad you're not gonna kill me, so I'm gonna keep investigating this." And so he keeps getting more and more into what's going on. And apparently, like the lady who was getting murdered, it was her gallery with her husband, and husband was like, "Whoa, this sucks." And then it turns out that the lady had just sold a painting of a man stabbing a woman, and it was a big deal. And that's how you know that art is bullshit because it was a really, really bad painting. But the guy, he goes to meet the artist to ask some questions. And the artist is like, I eat cats because I'm eccentric. And the guy's like, man, fuck the art world. So he leaves. And then he gets home and he had recorded the conversation with the killer. And they're like, oh man, that sound in the back, that is one particular bird. His name's Henry, and I know where he is.
I
So they
believe
go to
his
the
name
zoo.
is Henri.
Wait, do you actually have a name? Or
I don't know.
no? Okay, I was like, oh shit, did I guess what his name in the credits was and then mispronounce it? Because that would be really great. Like Cuckoo played Henri in The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, but they go to the zoo to see Henri, and he's just like. He's called the bird with the crystal plumage, but he's just like a fucking ugly bird. He's like a peacock, like but like a peahen. He's not a cute bird. He's not. I like birds, well, like on a list of like birds from like 1 to 10, I'd give him like a 7. And there was
He's
no crystal plumage, but they do decide, or they do discover that there's a window that Henri can be seen from. So then they go up there, and then blah 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 blah. It turns out that the lady who was getting murdered in the beginning was not getting murdered. Her husband was trying to not be murdered, and then she almost got murdered. It was a reverse murder. She went crazy from seeing the painting because the art world is bullshit. The end.
yeah, okay.
Yep.
That's a good solid rundown, I think,
Thank you.
of the bird with the crystal plumage.
Yeah.
Uh,
Fuck that painting.
before
It was not good.
before we go anywhere, the cat eating painter, Berto is his name, Berto Consalvi. Played by an actor named Mario. I don't know if it's Adorf or Adorf. It's Adorf. Mario Adorf. Here's what I love. Like, I exploded into laughter when this appeared on my screen. Oh, maybe a minute into the film. They're running the credits, and at one point it says, and Mario Adorf as guest star. And I was just, what, that's going to be his name? His character is called guest star? I don't know. It's so obvious. It's just like a weird translation thing, but something about it just made me cackle my fucking ass off. So let me break it down here. So I told you there were 3 people over the course of this film that I suspected might be the killer, and I was wrong on all 3 of them. The first one, this is the one that I messaged you about. I sent Michelle a message. I was like, I'm 55 minutes into this film, and I think I know who done it. And I thought it was gonna be the cop, the detective, who we see from the very beginning, who takes his passport. I thought it was gonna be him. And then I was like, oh shit, he got a phone call from the killer, so how could it be him? And then they do that bit where they're like, oh, but these are not the same voice. And I was like, it still could be him. And it's not, it's not even close to him, right? Not even close. And then at one point, excuse me, I'm all coffee. At one point, it slowly dawned on me because I had forgotten the detail just as the movie was going along. But Carlo, the guy, he takes the tapes off the reel-to-reel machine. He had the mustache, and he's like smoking these big cigars. And they mention at the beginning of the movie that the killer probably smokes cigars, and just a combination of, and of course he's one of the people, I think, that is with Julia when she leaves that final scene. And so I was like, oh, he's running off with her. And then it wasn't him. Side note, it wasn't him. And then I very briefly thought it was going to be Julia. Like, I thought Julia was just like, and I thought her whole thing where she's laying on the ground, partially stabbed, and then you see Sam, and you like, you think it's him, but no, Sam, or not Sam, Carlo. Where did Sam's the main guy. But you see Carlo, and he's got that crazy eyes look on his face, but then because he's dead. He's been stabbed in the back. and I thought they were gonna have Julia be like, "Surprise, it's me," but no. It turns out it's the lady who almost got killed at the beginning of the movie, and I felt, frankly, like a real jackass because that's about the most obvious thing it could have been, and let me tell you why. Because when they show that stabbing sequence to the audience the first time, like later in the movie, they show you like a nice close-up view where you actually can see that it's actually her trying to do the stabbing. We don't even see either person from like mid-chest up until that moment at the end of the film. We have no idea. Like it just never crossed my mind. Like I was just like, oh, he got interrupted by Sam while he was trying to murder this lady. And so he had to run away, and he didn't get the job done. I even for a minute thought they were going to thought it was going to be that lady's husband who claims he was the killer at the end of the movie for just a brief moment. But they hint at him so early on that I was like, no, it can't be him. I thought it was a really effectively told murder mystery. And then there's all sorts of visual stuff that I want to talk about, but I have obviously been babbling again. How did you feel about this movie just as a story? Did you have any, like, did you figure out who it was? Did you have any guesses that proved to be incorrect?
I had two guesses. The second I saw Julia, I went, "Oh shit, she's stabby." So I really thought it was her for like the entire film. Even after she got stabbed, I was like,
And
"Nah,
that's
I still
that's
think
why
it's you."
that's actually why she's agreeing to go to America with him, because she wants to get
That's
the
what
fuck out
yeah,
of Italy.
exactly.
Yeah,
She's like, "Oh
yeah.
my god, everybody gets to murder in America. Ah, the land of the free." So I thought it was her like the whole time because I was like, it's gonna be somebody out there. So I was just thinking anybody they were hinting at, it wasn't going to be them. So that's why I just went, nah, her. And then my second guess was just Argento himself, and it was going to be super meta, and he was going to be like, "Ah, I directed the film, but I'm also killing people," and be like,
Oh,
"Whoa,
well,
whoa."
that's funny you mentioned that, Michelle.
Oh,
I don't know if you know this,
probably not.
but it's well known that in almost every case, especially in his early work, including this film, in almost every case where all you see is the killer's hands with some kind of sharp object slicing or stabbing up a lady, that's fucking Argento. Like, that's him. Like, he's got the gloves on. He's holding the knife. Like, he's actually doing that.
Dario Argento is to knives what Quentin Tarantino is to feet.
Like, if you look at the IMDb page for The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, you're looking at you don't even have to go deep into it. It's just the first page top cast. The very last person in the top cast, it says Dario Argento, Murderer's Hands, uncredited.
Wow, I'm genius. I didn't even know that, and yet I knew it.
All of those movies, and the vast majority of the, I guess I can't say as an expert that it's absolutely every time, but he was well known for being the guy. No, it's like because he was so particular, right? He wanted things to be. It's just, oh man, he's weird. I didn't say this earlier about Panico. What did you think of that last shot where they're just kind of sitting there on him all contemplative, and then his expression changes just before it cuts? I thought that was great. Anyway, it's too late.
Like in the documentary.
Moment has passed. No, the moment has passed. So then would you say that you, like me, didn't know that it was the lady who was almost killed at the beginning until the moment they told you?
Yeah, because that same shot you're talking about, I thought it was strangely framed, but I chalked that up to this being Argento's very early work, and that it was just not a great camera angle. And then it turns out, no, it was a great camera angle. And we just all assumed.
I actually, I mentioned that there are visual things about this that I love, and I think that are also, like I said, cues towards where he was going. Like, nothing in this has that sort of ethereal, not entirely natural feel that a lot of his other stuff like even Deep Red has this really sort of, it's just kind of off just a little bit. But the way he shoots things, like that shot is incredible. It's a solid static shot from across the street, perfectly framed, so you see the entire facade of the building with all of the glass windows and the doors, and that top level where it's got like the sign with I think the name of the place on it or something. But it's a perspective shot. Like, if you were there standing on the street, that's what you would have seen. And so you never stop to consider that it's also a deliberate angle to make sure you don't know what's actually happening. But then also, like, there are things he does with montage editing in this, like things sort of chopping back and forth that create this really sort of unsettling vibe. Things with the music that he does, including the music and the sound effects occasionally being mixed stupidly loud, so that when you come to those moments, it's all of a sudden like you gotta fucking grab your remote because you live in an apartment and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great sound work on this one. Great.
Yeah. Just a really well-written, well-directed first effort. His next film from this, Cat o' Nine Tails, was one of the first Argento films I saw. I got it on some like cheap knockoff DVD at a pawn shop for like $3. That one is good, but I didn't think it was part of the reason I never went back and saw Bird with Crystal Plumage is I had seen so much of the later stuff, and I was like, oh, the traditional Giallo Argento just maybe is not my, like I'm more the Suspiria Inferno kind of vibe. But this was fantastic. I loved this film.
I was just disappointed in what the bird looked like. I expected a beautiful bird.
Dude,
and how the fuck dare they?
I spent 3/4 of this movie being like, when the fuck are they going? Where's the fucking bird? Like, what the hell? And then I was like, are we going to go through this whole movie and the title just is never referenced anywhere in the film, and it's some sort of weird fucking abstract fucking expressionist art thing? And then,
right
of course,
right before I started this movie, I had read a thing about the killing of a sacred deer and the story behind that and like the Greek mythology. And so I went into this thinking like, this is going to be another fucking Greek mythology story I've never heard of, isn't it? I was totally prepared for it to be like, oh, the bird with the crystal plumage was actually like somebody encountered one and it cursed their family and blah, and this is a retelling. I spent the whole thing, I was like, oh, it's an actual bird, and I got excited because I like birds, and then it was a bullshit bird.
No,
so
not
disappointing.
Well, and of course it really resonates once you understand. It's like, oh, the bird is what finally sets them into the end game, into figuring out what's going on.
Yep.
Right? Just
I wish the bird had been like a fucking turkey. That would have been hilarious.
Wait, I mean, it kind of looked like a cross between a turkey and a swan.
It did not have crystal plumage. Whoever came up with that name, they don't know what birds can look like. Disappointing.
I'm gonna have to like, because I don't remember off the top of my head, but I'm gonna have to find out what that species of bird is, and I'm gonna have to Google some pictures because maybe we just
bird.
Maybe we just got
we didn't see its plumage.
Some shit images. Yeah, and the guy says something when he's explaining it about like something about how its feathers look, but then they never show them to us. So like that's weird.
It's like a butterface type of bird where we're like, well, show us the body, why don't you? Because this face is not good to look at. I just Googled it, and I'm looking at the shot, and yeah, I don't see that plumage at all. How dare they? Show me the crystal plumage.
A real butterbeak.
I think it's the type of bird that's in Fern Gully. No, I'm not even joking. I think it's the ones that like talk to her.
Oh my god, that would be hilarious.
I'm pretty sure that's the Fern Gully bird.
Oh. So I'm glad, Michelle, that this ended up being at least an Argento film that you were able to enjoy. I was really kind of nervous about it, but God, I'm so... I can't believe I didn't see this sooner, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I'm not surprised that I did not see it sooner.
Oh, I'm not surprised either.
I wanted to see that fucking bird made of glass, and that's disappointing. That's all I gotta say. That's why I didn't get a higher score. How dare I?
I mean, if you want to see I mean, just go watch Suspiria again. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, that'd make me feel better. I will do that.
I do love that film. Anyway, guys, Bird with the Crystal Plumage, solid fucking debut from Mr. Argento. Excellent film. Dario Argento, Panico. I think Michelle and I came to the ultimate conclusion together that if you are an Argento fan, you're probably going to love it. If you're not, it's not going to interest you, and that's cool, too.
Yep. It's all good. All of it's fine.
Ha!
I don't hate you either way.
Check it out, Michelle. I was thinking here, so I started navigating a little bit. I was like, I bet you there's something in the IMDb trivia section about this bird, right? Check this out. The Hornitus nivalis bird species doesn't actually exist. The one seen in the film is played by a gray-crowned crane. A gray-crowned crane, which probably explains why they didn't ever show us the crystal plumage.
Oh yeah, this bird does not have crystal plumage.
No, it really
Google
doesn't.
Gray-crowned crane. It's also not the ferngully bird. Once you see it in full, it's not. But
it's not
actually,
the ferngully bird.
The high-quality pictures. This is a pretty cool looking bird. That was just a bird on a bad hair day.
Well, no, I wonder if maybe what they're talking about, Michelle, is this splash of stuff on its head.
Those aren't crystals.
Well,
idiots.
No, but I mean, from a distance, with a light shining on it. But I bet that's what they're talking about, is that tuft on its head. I bet that's what it is.
I needed a beautiful bird. This bird was not attractive enough for me.
Even with that argument being made, I should also point out you never see that on the bird's head in the movie. I don't believe. I don't remember seeing it until I looked at these photos.
You see it, but it's low quality. It's not a big deal because it's a full body shot. They don't focus on the head to show you look at this crystal plumage, and the crystal plumage is like straw. It's not crystal. So I don't know. This bird looks way cooler when you Google it, though. So I take back everything I said. The one in the movie, bullshit bird. The actual gray-crowned crane, pretty cool.
Yeah.
I give that bird a 9 out of 10.
I really wanted this trivia fact to say the Hornitus nivalis bird species doesn't actually exist because birds aren't real.
If it flies, it spies.
Oh, yes, they do.
Okay.
Yes,
I got nothing else to say.
I don't
I'm glad
either.
that we cleared up the bird situation.
Yeah, so where do we go from here? What are we talking about next week, Michelle?
Why would you ask me that? It is Skeletons in the Closet, which is the new release. And then after that, double feature My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah, and then some others. Check out WeWatchShudder.com for the schedule of events. I don't have anything else to say, and that just means there's one thing left to do. Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.
For more horror content, visit WeWatchShudder.com, where you'll find our world-famous, patent-pending Ghoul blog and Squelch files, as well as a schedule of upcoming episodes. Find us on social media at WeWatchShudder on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and I guess Twitter if you're still doing that for whatever reason. You can email us. mail@WeWatchShudder.com is the address. mail@WeWatchShudder.com. You can even call and leave us a voicemail, 701-566-9510. No, really. 701-566-9510. Give it a shot. See what happens. We Watch Shudder is a production of Rat Factory Media.